The wind howled across the barren plains of Vexor 3. Sharp grains of red dust flew in the air, scratching everything they touched. A storm was coming, bigger than most. Jace adjusted the scarf over his face and pulled his hood tighter. His boots sank slightly into the cracked ground as he walked, each step heavy under the weight of his gear. He wasn't here for adventure. He wasn't here to be a hero. He was just passing through, one more human trader trying to survive in the alien. Fringe worlds. Lightning split the sky with a loud crack. He squinted toward the hills in the distance, searching for shelter. Then he heard it, a faint sound. Almost lost in the storm's roar. It was not the wind, not the sound of metal or beast. It was crying. Jace froze, listening carefully. Another faint sob, barely audible but real, came from behind a jagged boulder nearby. He moved slowly, hand near his sidearm, expecting maybe a trap. But when he looked around the rock, what he saw made his breath catch. A small alien girl, no older than 8 or 9 by human standards. Her skin was pale blue, dirty and scratched, her eyes glowing softly with tears. She was curled up tightly, hugging her knees, her whole body shaking when she saw him. She didn't scream or run. She just whispered with a trembling voice, "Please, human, help. My mom is trapped." Jace knelt down carefully, setting his weapon aside to show he meant no harm. The storm roared louder behind him, winds growing more violent. "Hey," he said gently, "what's your name?" The girl blinked, eyes wide. With fear, "Rilke," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Please help her. She's up there." She pointed with a shaking hand toward a tall cliff in the distance. Jace followed her finger and felt his gut twist. Above the cliffs flew massive winged creatures. The sky hunters, they were feared across the outer colonies. Brutal predators that built their nests in unreachable places. No one survived entering their territory. Jace looked back at the girl, who now had tears streaking down her muddy face. "She went to get food," Rilke said, "for me and the others. But the sky hunters came. And she didn't come back." Her lip trembled. "I followed her, but I got scared. And I fell." Jace looked at the storm, then at the girl. Then again at the sky where the monsters flew. Everything inside him said to walk away. This wasn't his fight, but he remembered another girl from long ago. With the same wide, scared eyes. He had failed that one. He would not fail again. "All right," he said, standing up, "we'll go together." Rilke's eyes widened. "Really?" He gave a small nod. "Really? But we have to move now before the storm traps us both." He lifted her into his arms carefully, her body light as a feather. She clung to him without a word. Burying her face in his chest, the wind tried to knock them down, but Jace pressed forward, heading toward the cliff. Each step was harder than the last. The ground turned steeper. The air colder. Behind them, the sky turned almost black, and lightning flashed again as they climbed. Rilke spoke. Softly, "She's brave, my mom. She fights the beasts when they come near the village." Jace nodded. "She sounds strong." "She is," Rilke said, "but I'm scared. The nest is high, and the sky hunters, they scream when they take you." Jace tightened his grip. Feeling the weight of her fear, "I've fought worse." He lied with a soft smile. "We'll bring her back." The sun began to fade behind the storm clouds, casting everything in strange orange light. The cries of sky hunters echoed above them like thunder mixed with hunger. Rilke held onto him tighter, and Jace knew this would be no easy rescue, but he had made a choice, and it was too late to turn back. At the edge of the first cliff, Jace stopped to catch his breath. The nest was still far above, hidden behind layers of sharp rock and monster wings. But the little girl in his arms looked up at him with something he didn't expect, hope, and that was enough to keep going. Together, they climbed into the storm. toward the beasts, toward the unknown, toward the heart of the sky hunters. Nest and Jace silently promised, if her mother was still alive, he would find her no matter what it cost. Asterisk, the mountain path was sharp and dangerous. Jace's boots slipped on the loose rocks, but he held on. Rilke clung to his back tightly, her small arms around his neck. She was cold. But she didn't complain, not once. The wind screamed louder as they climbed higher. Dark clouds moved fast across the sky. A storm was brewing over the peaks. And the giant winged shapes above began circling slower, as if they sensed something or someone approaching. They reached a narrow ledge, just wide enough for Jace. To rest, he gently lowered Rilke down and let her sit. She rubbed her arms and looked up at the sky with fear in her eyes. Jace pulled out his scanner and checked the air. The readings were strange, static in the wind. Heat signatures above them, and feathers scattered on the stone. Black feathers, huge ones, longer than his arm. Some still had blood on them, fresh and wet. He picked one up and showed it to Rilke. She nodded slowly. "That's them," she said, voice shaking. "Sky hunters." Jace scanned the blood, hoping for answers. The result made his stomach twist. It was not beast blood. It was alien blood, close to Rilke's genetic code. Someone like her had been here recently, and they had bled badly. He looked around and saw scratches on the rocks, claw marks, deep and wild. There had been a fight, and someone had been dragged away. "Your mother fought them," Jace said quietly. "She didn't go easily." Rilke nodded, eyes wide. She would never let them take her. They kept climbing. The path was marked now, not with signs, but with pain. A torn piece of cloth hung from a branch. A cracked blade lay half buried in dust and scattered beside it. Small flames, blue fire, unnatural and flickering in place without fuel. Jace knelt by the flame, waving his hand through it. It didn't burn. It felt cold. It was alien tech, possibly a flare or a signal. Maybe the mother had left it. Or maybe it was a trap. Rilke stepped beside him and whispered, "That's her light." Jace looked at her. "She used this before." "Yes," Rilke said, her voice growing stronger. "She marks her trail with cold fire to guide friends." Jace smiled slightly. It meant she was still trying to survive, still hoping someone would come. The trail of cold flames continued. Upward, Jace moved faster now, energy building in his steps, but the higher they went, the more bones they found, cracked skulls, snapped ribs, skeletons of beasts and humanoids, all victims of the sky hunters. The path became darker, colder. And then they saw it, the edge of the nest. It was not a simple structure. It was massive, a fortress of bones, branches, shipwrecks. An ancient stone. And it was burning. Dark smoke rose into the sky as part of the nest crackled with blue fire. Jace froze, staring in disbelief. Something had exploded there recently. He turned to Rilke, but she looked just as shocked. She had grenades, Rilke said softly. Old tech from the war. She said she'd only use it if she had no choice. Jace moved forward carefully. The nest now just a few meters away. He placed Rilke behind a fallen log and handed her his emergency beacon. "If anything happens," he said, "you press this and hide. Understand?" She grabbed his hand tightly, her fingers trembling. "Don't die," she whispered. "I won't," he lied, and turned toward the nest. Smoke stung his eyes as he crept closer. He stepped over shattered wood and twisted metal. The walls of the nest were covered in scratches and blood. Screeches echoed above the sky. Hunters were coming back, but inside the nest, he heard something else, a voice, weak and broken. He moved fast, crawling into the shadows. He found a chamber. Hidden deep under the bone towers, there, barely breathing, chained to the wall, was a woman. Her skin was the same shade as Rilke's, but her face was bruised, her clothes torn. She looked up with one eye half closed and whispered, "Rilke." Jace stepped forward. "She's safe," he said. "I'm here to help." The woman tried to sit up, but gasped in pain. "No time," she whispered. "They come. They come soon." Jace looked around for anything he could use to break the chains. Then he heard it, the flap of giant wings above. Screeching cries filled the air. The sky hunters were landing. He clenched his jaw, pulled his blade, and turned to face the entrance. The trail of feathers and fire had led him here. Now, he had to survive long enough to finish what he came to do. The wind shifted suddenly. Jace crouched low beside the chained alien woman. His knife gripped tightly in his hand. Outside the nest, heavy wing beats pounded the air. The sky hunters were coming home. He glanced at her face. She was trying to stay conscious, but her strength was fading. Blood ran down her arm from a deep wound near the shoulder. Chains held her legs and one arm. Bolted to the rock wall behind her, Jace whispered, "I'll get you out." The woman gave a weak nod, her lips barely moving. "You're human," she said slowly. "Why did you come?" "Your daughter begged me," he said simply. That answer seemed to surprise her more than anything else. A screech echoed through the nest as shadows crossed the opening above. Jace moved fast, grabbing a multi-tool from his belt and starting. On the chain lock, sparks flew as he drilled the first bolt loose. But there wasn't time. A crash shook the nest. One of the sky hunters had landed on the bone-covered ledge above them. Its massive talons scraped against the stone. Jace felt his pulse hammer in his ears as he ripped the first chain off. The woman gasped in pain but didn't scream. Her eyes were full of something else, not fear, but rage. Another shadow moved across the cave mouth. Jace worked on the second chain, hands moving fast. The screeching outside got louder, more furious. Suddenly, something dropped in front of the nest's entrance. Not a sky hunter, but a pile of bones and shredded cloth. Fresh blood still dripped from it. The woman's eyes widened. "They're feeding," she said weakly. "That means they'll come inside soon." Jace's tool jammed on the third bolt. He cursed under his breath and pulled out a small explosive charge from his pack. "Close your eyes," he warned. She did, and he placed the charge on the metal link. A quiet beep, then a pop. The chain broke free. She collapsed into his arms, barely conscious. But she whispered, "My name." "Is Laura?" Jace nodded. "I've got you, Laura." Just then, a deep growl came from the cave entrance. Jace turned his head slowly and saw it. One of the sky hunters had entered the nest, its wings folded, but it was still massive, 4 meters tall, all muscle, claws, and fangs. Its eyes glowed a sick yellow as it stepped inside. Sniffing the air, it saw Jace and roared. Jace set Laura gently behind a broken slab of metal. He stood and raised his plasma pistol. But the beast was fast, too fast. It lunged and he barely rolled out of the way. Its claws slammed into the rock wall. Shaking the nest, Jace fired 2 shots, hitting it in the shoulder. It shrieked, but didn't fall. Instead, it turned and swiped its tail like a whip, knocking Jace backward into the bone pile. Pain exploded in his ribs. He forced himself up, groaning, and pulled a fire stick from his belt. The beast came again, roaring with fury. This time, Jace threw the fire stick into its open mouth. A second later, it exploded, fire bursting from its jaw as it screamed and stumbled. The creature thrashed wildly, knocking over a part of the wall and causing the nest to tremble. But it didn't die, it just got angrier. Jace grabbed Laura again and started toward the back tunnel. The nest wasn't just one chamber, it was a maze. If he could find the old escape paths, maybe they could get out. He ducked into the shadows as the beast raged behind them. Rilke's voice echoed in his mind. "Don't die," she had whispered. He wasn't planning to. The tunnel narrowed and twisted downward. Jace half-carried, half-dragged Laura as fast as he could. Old bones crunched beneath their feet. He found a small alcove and slipped inside, covering the opening with debris. They hid in silence as the Sky Hunter stalked past the tunnel entrance. Its breath was heavy, its growls low and hateful. Then it moved on. Jace collapsed beside Laura, panting. Her breathing was shallow, but she was alive, I thought. "I'd die up there," she said quietly. "You almost did," he replied. "But your daughter didn't give up on you." Tears slipped down her cheek. "Mixing with dirt and blood, she's brave," Laura whispered, "just like her father." Jace didn't ask about him. He knew this wasn't the time. He checked his gear, low on energy, low on ammo, but he still had one hope. Rilke, waiting outside with the beacon. If she was safe, she might be able to signal someone. He pulled out his cum and whispered, "Rilke, can you hear me?" Static at first, then a small voice crackled through. "I'm here," she said. "I'm hiding. I saw the fire." "Good girl," he said. "Get ready. I'm bringing your mom home." But as he spoke, a second roar echoed from above. More wing beats followed. There was more than one Sky Hunter in the nest now. Jace looked at the wounded woman beside him, then toward the dark path ahead. The edge of the nest was only the beginning. The real danger was yet to come. Jace pressed his back against the cold stone. His breath came fast, his hands shaking slightly from the pain in his side. Laura lay beside him, too weak to walk. The cave was dark, lit only by the dim blue glow of the alien mineral. Veins running through the walls. He checked her wounds again, deep cuts across her arm, bruises on her face. And the worst, the gash near her ribs. She had lost too much blood. She wouldn't survive another fight. "I need to get you out," Jace said quietly. Laura opened her eyes and gave a faint smile. "You remind me of him," she whispered. "Who?" "He asked my mate," she said, voice weak. "Rilke's father. He was human too." Jace looked at her, surprised. "I didn't think humans and your kind ever." "Not often," she whispered, "but sometimes. Love doesn't care about species." Her eyes closed again, her head falling back against the stone. Jace knew time was running out, but the tunnel ahead was long, and the Sky Hunters were still nearby. He took out a stim shot and pressed it gently into her arm. It wouldn't heal her, but it would keep her awake. Laura gasped as the medicine took hold. She opened her eyes wide and grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said. "There's something you must know." Jace leaned closer. "I'm listening. The nest. It's not just a nest," she said. "It's a prison, a graveyard. They don't just eat, they guard." "Guard what?" Jace asked. "They feed on power. Ancient tech hidden in the mountain. They've become protectors of something they don't understand." Jace looked around the cave again, noticing strange markings on the walls, symbols glowing faintly. Not Sky Hunter signs, but something older. "What is it they're guarding?" "A weapon," she whispered. "One that can destroy cities. Or save them." Before Jace could ask more, a thunderous screech shook the tunnel. Dust rained from above. The Sky Hunters had found their trail. Jace grabbed Laura and lifted her into his arms. "I'll ask later," he said. "Right now, we run." He followed the winding tunnel, moving fast every few meters. The rocks shifted underfoot. Once, a chunk of ceiling dropped behind them, sealing the path they'd come through. The mountain was alive, and it didn't want them to leave. They reached a fork. One tunnel led down, the other up. Laura pointed upward weakly. "That way. Old escape shaft. Leads to sunlight." Jace didn't hesitate. He climbed one step at a time, holding her close. Her heartbeat was faint against his chest, but steady. He talked to her as he moved, trying to keep her awake. "Rilke's waiting," he said. "She's stronger than she looks." "She always was," Laura whispered. She's small, but her heart. It's like fire. They reached a small open area inside the cliff. Light poured in from above, a shaft leading to the surface. Jace looked up. It was too high to climb with one hand. And no ropes left. He set Laura down gently against a smooth rock, then searched his pack. He found one last rope launcher. Old, half broken. He aimed and fired. It caught on a beam high above. The line held, just barely. "I'll go up, then pull you," he told her. She didn't answer. Her eyes were half closed again, lips pale. Jace gritted his teeth and started climbing. The rope creaked under his weight. But he kept moving, hand over hand. Halfway up, a deafening roar filled the shaft. A sky hunter dove in from the side, wings spread wide, talons open. Jace had seconds to react. He swung his body sideways, pressing hard against the wall. The beast's claw missed him by inches, scraping sparks off the stone. It flew upward again. Circling for another attack, Jace climbed faster, ignoring the pain in his side. At the top, he reached a narrow ledge, pulled himself up, and slammed the locking. Bolt into the stone, he grabbed the rope and shouted, "Laura, hold on." Below, Laura opened her eyes weakly. She wrapped the rope around her waist and tied it with trembling fingers. The beast shrieked and dove again. Jace pulled with all his strength. The rope burned his palms, but he didn't stop. Laura rose slowly, swinging as the sky hunter passed just beneath her. Jace reached down and grabbed her arm, yanking her up just as the monster's claw tore through the air. They collapsed on the rocky edge, breathing hard. The beast roared outside the shaft, but couldn't fit through, for now. They were safe. Laura coughed and whispered, "You saved me." "Human," Jace smiled slightly. "Your daughter saved you." I just followed her voice. She reached up and touched his face gently. "She's waiting. Don't let her wait too." Long Jace looked at the horizon, the forest below, the smoke in the distance, and the flashing beacon light from the signal Rilke carried. He would not fail this family, not this time. He stood up, lifted Laura into his arms again, and began the journey down the mountain to bring the broken queen back to her daughter, and to face whatever else the sky hunters would throw at them next. The sky turned red as the sun dropped below the horizon. Smoke curled over the cliffs, glowing like fire in the fading light. Jace moved fast down the rocky trail, carrying Laura in his arms. His muscles burned with effort, but he didn't stop. Not with her breathing so slow, not with those monsters still behind them. The sky hunters screamed above, searching, angry. They knew someone had stolen from their nest, and they wanted revenge. Jace ducked into a crevice in the rock as a shadow passed over them. One of the creatures flew close, its yellow eyes scanning the ground. He waited silently, holding his breath. Laura's hand twitched slightly. She was still alive, but barely. When the shadow moved on, he crept back onto the path below them. The forest glimmered with the soft light of Rilke's beacon. She was still there, still waiting. It gave him strength. He checked his gear. One last flare, a half-charged plasma cell, and 3 firebombs. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The mountain trail curved sharply downward, exposed and wide. He would have to cross it fast and loud. But then he saw it, a broken piece of the sky hunter's nest, still burning behind them, and next to it, a narrow ridge filled with gas vents, volatile, unstable, perfect. Jace laid Laura gently behind a stone and opened his pack. He pulled out a firebomb and linked it to a timed charge. If he timed it right, the explosion would create a wall of fire, enough to slow the beasts or maybe even stop them as he worked. Laura opened her eyes slightly. "You're making noise," she whispered. "They'll come, I know." Jace replied, "I'm counting on it." He set the trap, placed the second and third bombs near the vents, and carried Laura to the edge of the cliff. Below was a steep slope. Dangerous, but survivable if they slid down. He braced her against his chest and waited. The screech came a second later. A sky hunter dove from the clouds. Wings pulled in, claws outstretched. It had seen them. Jace pressed the trigger. The firebombs exploded in a flash of blue and orange. Flames shot across the rocks, igniting the gas vents instantly. A wall of fire roared upward, and the blast caught the beast mid-air. It screamed, twisted, and fell in flames down the cliff. But it wasn't alone. More screeches filled the air as 3 more sky hunters appeared, flying in formation. "Hold tight," Jace said, and jumped. He and Laura slid down the slope. Rocks and ash kicking up around them, the fire behind lit the sky. Casting wild shadows over the mountain, the beasts circled above, unsure where to strike. They landed hard near the tree line. Jace rolled. Shielding Laura from the impact, he groaned as pain stabbed through his shoulder, but he stood up, still holding her from the distance. A small voice shouted, "Over here." It was Rilke, waving the beacon with both hands. Tears were streaming down her face. She ran toward them, her little feet stumbling across the roots and grass. "Mom," she cried. "Mom, please." Jace knelt and gently lowered Laura to the ground. Rilke threw herself into her mother's arms. Sobbing, Laura raised a weak hand and stroked her daughter's hair. "My little flame," she whispered, "you found me." Jace stepped back, his chest tight, but before they could rest, a deep roar echoed through the trees. The biggest sky hunter yet landed in the clearing. Its wings were tattered from old battles, its claws huge, its eyes burning with fury. It had followed them. It wanted blood. Jace stepped between the beast and the mother and child. He raised his last flare and fired it into the air. The light burst in the sky, blinding the creature for a second. Then it charged. Jace didn't run. He reached for the plasma blade on his back. It flickered to life, buzzing low and angry. The sky hunter leaped, and Jace rolled under its wing, slashing upward. The blade cut deep into its side, and black blood sprayed across the trees. It howled and turned, slamming its tail into Jace's back. He hit the ground hard, coughing blood, but he stood again, legs shaking. "Stay away from them," he growled. The beast lunged again, this time. Jace didn't dodge. He stepped in close and jammed the blade into its throat. With a final roar, the creature collapsed. Shaking the earth as it died, silence fell over the forest. The fire on the mountain still burned, lighting the sky behind them. The last of the hunters was dead. Jace dropped to one knee, exhausted. Rilke ran to him and hugged him tightly. "You did it." She cried, "You saved her." He smiled through the pain. "No," he whispered. "We did it together." Behind them, the mountain glowed like a burning crown. And above, the stars slowly began to return. Asterisk smoke rose from the mountain behind them. The air still trembled from the fire and the fall of the last sky hunter. But the danger was not over yet. Jace could barely stand. His ribs ached with every breath, and blood dripped from a wound on his back. Still, he turned toward Laura and Rilke, both huddled under the shadow of a large tree. He walked over and knelt beside them. Laura was breathing slowly, eyes fluttering. Shut again, her body couldn't take much more. She needed medical help fast, and they were still miles away from the nearest outpost. Jace turned to Rilke. "Listen to me," he said gently. "We have to fly." Now she blinked up at him, confused. "But we don't have a ship," she said. "We're trapped here." Jace opened his pack and pulled out a folded signal flag. Then he nodded toward the wreckage in the distance. "Not a ship," he said. "A glider, your mom's wrecked one." Rilke's eyes widened. "I know where it is," she said, jumping to her feet. "Then take me," Jace said. "We don't have long." They raced through the forest, Jace limping and clutching his side. The air was filled with ash and falling embers. Animals screamed in the distance. Fleeing the burning cliffs, the forest was dying. The fire was spreading faster than anyone could stop. Finally, they reached the crash site. The glider lay on its side, half buried under broken trees and burnt grass. Its wings were scorched, and one side looked torn apart. Jace moved closer, eyes scanning the wreck. "The core is still intact," he said, surprised. "Think you can help me fix it?" Rilke nodded. "I watched her fly it," she said proudly. "She taught me." Together, they worked fast. Jace repaired the left wing using spare panels from his pack. Rilke crawled inside and started the ignition codes. Sparks flew. The engine coughed, then whined to life. "She's ready," Rilke said, eyes wide with fear and hope. "Good," Jace said. "Go get your mother. I'll prep the takeoff." Minutes later, Laura was secured in the glider, unconscious but stable. Rilke sat beside her, holding her mother's hand tightly. Jace climbed into the front seat and gripped the controls. The wind howled around them. The mountain behind, now fully on fire. Glowing like a volcano, he hit the thrusters. The glider lurched forward, rolling over the burnt field. Wings caught the air, then they were up. Flying, the ground dropped beneath them, and the sky opened wide. Rilke gasped as they soared above the trees, but just as Jace started to relax, a shape rose from the smoke, another sky hunter. One they hadn't seen, its wings stretched wide. Eyes glowing with rage, it had followed them from the mountain, silent and waiting. "It's coming," Rilke shouted, pointing behind them. Jace twisted the glider, rolling through the smoke. The beast chased close behind, roaring as it dove. Its claws slashed through the air, missing the tail by inches. Jace threw the glider into a steep dive. The wind screamed in their ears, the forest racing toward them. At the last second, he pulled up, barely skimming the trees. The sky hunter tried to follow, but its wing caught a burning tree. It spun out, crashing into the forest below. They shot back up into the sky, clear of the smoke. But the engine sparked and sputtered. It was failing. "We're going down," Jace said. "Where?" Rilke cried, holding tight to her mother. Jace scanned the ground. A river shimmered ahead, wide and smooth, if we're lucky. "We'll float," he said. The glider dove again, lower and lower. Trees passed in a blur. Wind roared in their ears. Jace pulled up just enough to level out. Then crash. The glider hit the river hard, skimming across the water before finally coming to a stop near the riverbank. Water rushed in, but Jace unbuckled fast. He turned and helped Rilke carry her mother out of the wreck. All three of them collapsed on the shore, wet, shivering, and breathing alive. Jace rolled onto his back and stared at the sky. It was clear now, stars slowly appearing above. The fire on the mountain lit the horizon in orange and gold, but here, by the river, it was quiet. "We made it," Rilke whispered, her voice small but full of wonder. Jace turned his head and gave her a tired smile. "You flew," he said. She nodded proudly. "Just like she taught me." Laura stirred beside them, her eyes opened slightly, and she looked up at the stars. "Home," she whispered. "You brought me home." Jace didn't reply. He was too tired, too sore, but inside he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The fire behind them would burn for days. But here by the water, under the stars, a mother and daughter were together again, and a human who came as a stranger had become something more. The morning came slow and gentle. The fire on the mountain still glowed in the distance, but its heat no longer reached them. Cool mist rose from the river, wrapping around the trees like soft breath. Birds returned, chirping carefully, as if unsure the nightmare had passed. Jace sat beside the fire he had built from driftwood. His shirt was torn, his arm wrapped in cloth. His face pale from pain and exhaustion, but his eyes stayed open, watching the two figures sleeping close to him, Laura and Rilke. Mother and daughter curled together under a makeshift blanket. Safe at last, he didn't move. He didn't dare break the peace. This moment was fragile, like glass catching sunlight, and he wanted to remember it forever. After some time, Rilke stirred. She opened her eyes and looked around, confused at first. Then her eyes landed on her mother. She sat up quickly and leaned over. "Mom?" she whispered, touching Lyra's face gently. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, they were clear. "Rilke," she said softly, her voice still weak. The girl sobbed and wrapped her arms around her mother, burying her face in her shoulder. "I thought I lost you," she cried. Laura held her close. "You found me," she whispered. "You never gave up." Jace turned his head away. Giving them privacy, his heart felt heavy, but not with sadness. It was something else. Something that filled the emptiness he had carried for so long. After a while, Rilke walked over to him and sat down beside the fire. She looked up at him with those same glowing eyes that had first pleaded for help. "You saved her," she said. Jace shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "You did. I just followed your voice." She smiled. A real smile this time. Then her face turned serious. "You're not going to leave now, are you?" she asked quietly. Jace blinked, surprised. I hadn't thought that far," he said. Rilke looked down, her fingers picking at the hem of her shirt. "Most people leave," she whispered. "They help. Then they disappear." Jace looked at her. This little girl had crossed burning mountains, faced monsters, and still believed in others. He couldn't walk away from that. Not now, not ever. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver pendant. It was old, scratched, and human-made, a memory of someone he had once failed to save. He placed it in Rilke's hands. "This was my sister's," he said. "I lost her a long time ago. I couldn't protect her." Rilke looked at the pendant, then at him. "But you protected me," she said softly. Jace nodded. "I did," he said, "and I'll keep protecting you. If you'll let me." Rilke's eyes filled with tears. Again, but this time, they were happy tears. She jumped forward and hugged him tightly. "Then stay," she said. "Please stay." Behind them, Laura watched silently. She smiled weakly as she saw the way her daughter clung to the human like he had always been part of their world. She had never imagined a stranger could carry so much light into their darkness. Later that afternoon, a rescue ship arrived. An old colony freighter that picked up Rilke's signal beacon. They flew low over the river and landed nearby. Jace carried Laura aboard, with Rilke close at his side. The medics took her gently, treating her with care and awe. Word spread fast. The sky hunters were dead, the nest destroyed. A human had walked into their domain, and walked out with the one prisoner no one thought would ever be saved. The villagers whispered stories before Jace even stepped off the ship. Some called him a warrior, others a legend, but Rilke just called him family. Days passed, then weeks. Laura healed slowly, her body still scarred but growing stronger each day. She spent her mornings walking the gardens with Rilke and her nights watching the stars with Jace. He built them a small house near the river, simple, strong, and quiet, a place where fire couldn't reach, and sky hunters would never fly again. One night, as stars lit the sky and cool wind danced through the trees, Rilke sat beside Jace near the water. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "You're not going to leave, right?" Jace smiled and looked down at her. "No," he said, "I made a promise." She smiled back. "Good," she said, "because I already told the others you're my hero." He chuckled softly. "I don't feel like one, but you are." She said, "You came when no one else did. You stayed when others would have run, and you saved us." Jay stared at the water. The reflection of the firelight, the stars, and the girl beside him dancing in the surface. Maybe he wasn't a hero, but he was something more now, a protector. A friend, a father figure to someone who believed in him when he didn't believe. In himself, he reached down and squeezed her hand. "I'll always stay, Rilke," he said. "That's my promise," and with the river behind them, the stars above, and peace in their hearts. A broken family became whole again, not because of blood, but because one human had listened to a cry in the storm and chose not to walk away.